Welcome to the Huddle Up Podcast, your go-to show for all things Broncos.
Once again, Broncos country, it is time to huddle up. I am Carl Dumler, and with me as always, we have the legend Nick Kendell. This show's focus is all things that pertain to your Denver Broncos, with an extra focus on the NFL Draft. Nick and I will continue to talk general Broncos news, but always have a focus towards team building. We still stand by our statement, though, that building teams in the offseason and playing armchair GM is just as fun as the actual games on Sunday. Follow myself on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH, as well as follow Nick at Nick Kendell MHH, and tweet us as much as you like, and follow the podcast account at HuddleUpPod. You can also find ours and our co-writers' content at milehighhuddle.com, a part of Scout.com and the CBS Sports Digital Network. We know you listeners are as football and Bronco crazy as we are, so please give us a click and subscribe to us on iTunes, as well as iHeart, Stitcher, SoundCloud, CastBox, and Spreaker. Don't forget to share us on Facebook and Twitter. We wouldn't be here today without you listeners, so please take the time to rate and subscribe to let your voices be heard on how you enjoy the show. We really appreciate the reviews that we have received, and one from Rob Tanamo Bay. We appreciate it very much of you saying, wow, this podcast is exactly what I've been needing. As a lifelong diehard Denver Broncos fan, Huddle Up has been a constant source of my daily football fix. They always have correct news close to first, great in-depth knowledge of the game, and outstanding analyzing of different situations from on the field to front office ideas. These guys knock it out of the park each and every podcast. I highly recommend it and suggest it to anyone who wants to deep dive into the NFL's best team. My worst days are the days they don't release a new podcast. Keep up the great work, guys. Well, Rob Tanamo Bay, we really appreciate it, man. Make sure to look at us on iHeart, Stitcher, SoundCloud, CastBox, and Spreaker. Don't forget to share us on Facebook and Twitter. We are switching from defense to offense. And, the defense, everybody knows, great unit, been great the last 2 years. Who was it that rated the Broncos as having two of the top 30 defenses of the last 30 years? I think it was Football Outsiders.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. Well, we're maybe in line for a third of the past 30 years this year. And so the unit that probably needs the more talking about, because this is, the make or break. Defense is Super Bowl ready, but can the offense match it? And today we're going to be diving into the trenches. These two units of the tackles and the inside guys, this will go a long way in determining whether we are Super Bowl contenders or struggling to be 8-8 in this upcoming season. And today we're going to start with the offensive tackles. Last year, maybe one of the weakest parts of the entire team. Both those guys, well, I guess Stevenson's still here. Barely.
They've still been replaced, though.
Yeah, he has been replaced with a new starter. And this is something I've been kind of tracking. The last 3 years, we've replaced 3 or more starters on the offensive line. So it's been the one area that Elway and company have not been able to figure out of how to get a good starting unit. Ever since Clady went down, it's just not been the same. And this, again, will be another year where we have 2 new starting tackles and a new starting guard at least, maybe more. And like I said, we're going to deep dive into this tackle group and see if maybe there is a little bit of promise for this year, maybe a little bit of hope that this could be a good pairing for the next few years. But first, let me tell you about Audible. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/huddleup. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Again, that's www.audibletrial.com/huddleup. Nick, I know you're going on a long trip here. Are you planning on maybe listening to a book through Audible?
Oh, definitely. My girlfriend is not the best flyer, so I'm still going to be there to support her, but I'm going to have my earbuds in, trying to relax a little bit, maybe catch a little shut-eye on the flight, and definitely listen to audible.com.
Perfect. Yes, it's perfect for those kind of trips and taking on those long flights. If our listeners don't know, Nick is getting to go to Costa Rica during this NFL downtime. You know, he gets to have a nice little distraction while the rest of us sit here and twiddle our thumbs waiting for training camp to kick off on July 27th.
Yeah, but to be fair, I haven't taken a vacation day since going to the combine. So I've been working pretty hard here over the last few months and been saving up those vacation hours and putting away that money and excited to go somewhere. It's not too expensive and get to see some wildlife, some sloths. I'm excited about the sloths, of course, and should be a good time.
Well, hopefully our offensive tackles are a little faster than a sloth this year.
Fingers crossed, man. Yeah. There's no telling, though.
Well, before we dive into the guys we have this year, let's look at last year. Last year, we started off with signing Russell Okung. And, you know, I was a little excited about it, worried about him not staying healthy, but he did survive all 16 games. And the Broncos signed him to what I thought was an awesome deal. You know, 1 year prove-it deal for $5 million and then a 4-year option for, I think, like $48 million. Unfortunately, the NFL did not view it this way. And this comes back to, I don't know what you want to call it, comp pick gate? Is that what you'd call it?
Just Denver getting screwed out of a comp pick again.
Yeah. I think that was maybe the most angry you and I were all off season, was when we didn't get this comp pick for Russell Okung as he went to the Chargers on a huge deal. And, you know, the NFL recognized it as a 5-year deal instead of just this 1-year option. Well, anyway, so he's gone. He's gone off to the Chargers. And good luck to – well, not good luck to him. I don't know what you want to call it, but have fun there, I guess.
Thanks for your time in Denver.
Yeah, there you go. And then, of course, the Broncos signed Donald Stevenson from the Chiefs. And he is still with the team, and we'll see if he's gonna make it. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But not a great showing with the Broncos. I think he finished as the worst offensive tackle in the NFL this past season. Oh boy.
One of them.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what we had last year, and it was not pretty, and got our quarterbacks hurt, and quarterbacks also weren't having the best depth at times. They didn't help out the offensive tackles a whole lot, but it was rough to watch. And so, honestly, part of me is sitting here saying, I don't think we could be much worse.
You say that.
Yeah, I say that. I know. Knock on wood here. But yeah, looking at this year's unit, I think there's a little bit more promise. And we can always start here with Garrett Bowles. And we've talked about him quite a bit on this podcast because we're draft nuts. And Garrett Bowles has been on our radar since October, November, something like that.
Yeah, October was when I first mocked him to Denver.
Right. Yeah. You had him clear back then as being a Denver Bronco. I mean, I don't think anybody in their right mind had him close to being a Bronco at that point. So
I got lucky.
Yeah. Nick Kendell, he was first on the scene for this guy. Yeah. But Garrett Bowles, our first round pick and expected to be our starting left tackle. Let's just deep dive into this guy. What can you say about him?
Well, sorry to backtrack first, but it's worth mentioning that Ty Sambrailo also was one of the mishap tackles last year. That was I wouldn't call him a starter, but he was our third tackle, and when he played, it was atrocious. I mean, we're going to get a little more in depth of him soon, but you say Donald Stevenson was the worst tackle in football last year. He might have been based on racking up enough snaps where he was not good enough, but from just a pure snap-to-snap basis, I think Sambrailo was worse. I mean, he just got destroyed by Vic Beasley. And I remember the first half of the Chiefs game at Denver where I think Justin Houston had like 2.5 sacks in one quarter against Sambrailo. So let's not forget as much as I'd like to forget, let's not talk about how much Sambrailo struggled last year.
That's true. We can say this with certainty. There was no team that had a worse right tackle situation than the Broncos last year.
Yeah, absolutely.
You combine those two, it was terrible. I mean, it was kind of one of those, who you're going to send out there that's just going to get beat every play. That's kind of what it boiled down to.
Yeah, and it's magnified by the fact that the AFC West is just flipping loaded with edge rush talent. I mean, you got Bosa, Ingram, Irvin, Mack, Ford, Holly, Houston. I mean, there's nowhere else in the NFL that has edge rushers like the AFC West. And then, of course, Von Miller, Shaq Barrett, and Shane Ray. So If you're going to be a tackle in the AFC West, you better have a short-term memory and get used to getting your booty beat or your booty waxed, because those edge rushers are some of the best in the league.
Right. And unfortunately for the Broncos, we have caused some guys to have some career days against us. We're going to talk about a guy in Schofield that, oh man, he gave Mac, he put him on the map of the NFL. He was there before that, but all of a sudden then everybody's going, this is maybe the best player in the NFL. And I'm going, did you see who he went against? It was terrible. But anyway, on to who we have here. Garrett Bowles is who we're starting with, our rookie first-round pick, hopefully starting left tackle. What can you tell us about him?
Well, Garrett Bowles has a prototypical frame for the tackle position. He is 6'5", around 300 pounds. He measured at 297 at the combine with 34-inch arms, which for me personally, you want about 33.5 as the absolute minimum for a tackle, because otherwise they just need to be able to, with longer arms, they create a harder angle for edge rushers to get to the quarterback, and also they do a better job of having edge rushers not get into their chest. So normally, you don't care if a guy has like 37 arms compared to like 35-inch arms, but there's that minimum, and Bowles reaches that cutoff, so that's important. He had a phenomenal combine too on the field, 4.9 540, so sub 540 for a lineman is incredible. And then his 3-cone was one of the best in the history of the combine for a offensive tackle at 7.29. That was also better than Dalvin Cook, who's supposed to be the agility back in this last year's class. So a very good athlete, and my pre-combine comparison of Taylor Lewan / Jason Spriggs kind of rings true. He's not the same athlete as Lane Johnson. Lane Johnson is the right tackle for the Eagles, who might be one of the best athletic tackles that's come through in the last decade. But he's that tier underneath them, so I'm excited to use that raw athleticism and see it on the field this year.
Agreed. Yeah, that's what you're getting. Day one, you have a top athlete of the position. Maybe not quite the top guy, but like you said, Lane Johnson, he's just ridiculous. But beyond him, yeah, he's in that next tier, and that's nice to have. It helps him, say he does get a little out of position. He has the athleticism to recover and get right back in there. And the thing that I love about him that you see on tape above everything else is he has that aggressive attitude, that mean streak that he just wants to hurt somebody. I love his interviews because he's like the nicest guy in the world off the field. But you see him on the field, and he just he'll put you on the ground, and then he'll just kind of stand over the top of you and just kind of stare you down like, yeah, this is going to be how it's going to be all day. And I love it. I love what he brings on the field, and it matches what the Broncos are trying to do. Bringing in Ronald Leary and Menelik Watson, they're trying to become the bullies of the AFC West. They're going to make guys pay, and Garrett Bowles fits right into that. So we're just going to have to see. That's the big thing, though, is that he's raw. They saw it in the Pac-12 this last year. He started off struggling quite a bit against, the early games for a Pac-12 team are usually their easy games, their warm-up games. And in his first 267 snaps last year, he gave up 2 sacks, 1 quarterback hit, and 9 hurries. Not good. For a tackle, especially against inferior opponents, that was not good. But beyond that, for the final 624 snaps of the season, he gave up 1 sack, 0 quarterback hits, and only 7 hurries. So that's where I have the promise of good things to come, that he has improved, that he works to improve. He figures out what he does wrong. And those stats came against guys like USC, Washington, Colorado, who actually have some pass rushers. So I think there's some promise there with this kid. But I think you and I both kind of agree there might be a struggle early on.
I would be absolutely shocked if he came out of the gates and played a Ryan Clady level year one. Ryan Clady stunk that first preseason game where he got whooped up on, and then after that he was all rookie and went on to be, I think, an all-pro the next year. I'm not expecting that with Bowles. I'm expecting a rougher first year, somewhat similar to DJ Humphries, who was a tackle drafted by the Cardinals a couple years ago. Good athlete, but still kind of learning the position and just started getting it together at the end of last year. So it took him about 2 years for it to start really coming together for the athleticism to match the on-field play. Like you're talking about, he had a great time at Utah this year. His first year playing, he did not allow a single pressure on a bull rush, according to Pro Football Focus, which is phenomenal, but he's going to need to get stronger at the NFL. One reason I think the bull rush, the lack of giving up pressures on a bull rush, was the type of offense that Utah ran was a shotgun spread with a heavy quarterback run heavy offense. So not a lot of 5-7 step drops and having the quarterback, be exposed or asking Bowles to hold passing blocks for a long time. So in the AFC West, like we talked about, especially Mack and Bosa, who are great bull rushers at the edge position, he's going to need to get a little stronger to handle those guys. But I'm excited for the raw potential. Like, I think he's going to get up to probably 315 pounds compared to his 297 that he weighed at the combine, which is more than enough for a left tackle at 6'5", to be strong enough to not get pushed back. After that, it's going to come more down to technique and just, the savviness that comes with being a tackle and using different hand technique at different times, whether it be a one-hand punch, two-hand punch, etc. So I'm excited for him. I think he'll probably, if he's mediocre this year, I wouldn't be surprised. That's actually what I'm expecting. But I'm also looking for him to progress linearly each year. He improved technically and mentally almost a game-to-game basis. So it's important for the Bronco fans to be patient because Bowles has the tools and demeanor to succeed, but will likely be up and down this first year.
The one thing that I think that can translate well and early for him, though, is his run blocking. He graded out as the second best run blocking tackle in this last draft. And, he anchored one of the best run attacks in college football, especially to that left side. Utah, they when they needed a yard, that's where they took it to, that left side with either the quarterback or running back, whoever it was. And I'm excited to see him in the run game. He's going to be next to some big guys, either Garcia or Leary, one of the two. And, Garcia, yeah, he struggled in pass blocking last year, but run blocking, man, when he had to, hat on hat, that's where the Broncos needed to go last year. And that's probably what irritated me more than anything with Kubiak and his system. They always wanted to go to the right side. And you wrote a great article not too long ago about the struggles of that right side. And, it was where our weakness was of Schofield and Stevenson or Sambrilo, one of the two. And I still can't understand why they kept going to the right side when they needed a yard. Oh, my goodness. But anyway, that was last year. This year, that's the big thing they wanted to improve on, was getting that physical ability right up the middle. And, running between the tackles, and Garrett Bowles can do that day one for them. Yeah, he is a little bit undersized, but he has that mean streak that he just wants to go destroy somebody. And I think that's going to really carry over first year.
Yeah, and he weighed in undersized, but I don't think long-term he's a guy that we're going to worry about being too small. He's an adequate frame, in my opinion. And with only playing Division I 1 year, being in that weightlifting program, you get him in an NFL strength and conditioning program, and I see him getting up to the 315, no problem. So
yeah, I agree. And something to keep in mind here, I'm trying to remember what his weight was, or what it is right now. The tackle for the Cowboys, Tyrone Smith, yes. He's right at 300 pounds, and they run a power blocking scheme. And so everybody thinks you have to have these 320, 330-pound guys to run this kind of scheme. That's not true. Offensive linemen, it's at this point, when you get up to that 300, 310-pound range, it's about angles. It's about getting the leverage. It's about knowing how to use your hands. It's knowing when to punch. And, those are the things that Bowles is going to have to work on. He's got to work on when his punch needs to hit and, how to attack guys, how to attack angles, when to, attack early, when to wait for a guy to come into his body and then try to punch. Those are all things he's going to have to work on. But, yeah, I think that he can still translate early on for that run game just because of his aggressive attitude. And he does win well with leverage. I saw guys, try to bull rush him. I know you said that with the offense that they run, but there were a lot of times where I saw some pretty big guys, especially against Washington. They had some of their bigger guys try to go against him, with him being a little bit more undersized. And he held his ground. He didn't let them push him back into the quarterback.
Yeah, no, he does have that strength, especially when he's initially making contact. But it's more that secondary strength that I worry about, where he can sustain blocks. Because he is such a good athlete. When he fires into his blocks, he can really generate some pop. So that has me excited for the drive blocks. But he's going to need to continue to work on his core strength and add more lower body strength in order for him to push guys out of the way and sustain those blocks in the power blocking scheme. But overall, I'm excited about him. Denver wanted him. He was a top 10 player on their board. And something that we haven't mentioned either that I think is going to be awesome for him this year, how McCoy likes to use a lot of those tackles is in the screen game. Some of his best plays were where he was outside the hash marks, moving down the field, creating lanes, and running in front of either a running back or a wide receiver in a screen. So if you remember with Peyton Manning and Demaryius Thomas and even somewhat Eric Decker, Mike McCoy was amazing calling and utilizing the screen game for the wide receivers. So I'm expecting to see Bowles running down the field at places where you don't normally see 300-pound linemen down the field.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. I can't remember who were they playing where he just leveled a guy that never saw him coming in the screen game.
USC. It was Cameron Smith, who people think
That's right.
might be a first-round pick this year.
That's right. Yeah, that was crazy. I'm surprised that guy got off the ground because he was parallel to the ground at one point, floating in the air, and that was awesome to see. And there's been a couple other plays that really show Bowles of just his athleticism, of just getting out there where he has to get like clear to the sideline almost on a screenplay, and he's running just right along there with the wide receiver. Pretty much going about that same speed. It's pretty impressive watching this guy run. And so, yeah, I'm excited to watch that and excited to see how our first round pick does. But like you said, we got to temper our expectations a little bit early. Give this guy some time. Don't sit there and say he's a bust day one. I know some people have done that with Paxton Lynch. He's played 2 games, not looked great in either of those games. Oh, he's a bust. That's not how this game works. There's plenty of guys that were terrible early on. The Raiders, they just signed Derek Carr to the largest contract in NFL history, and his rookie year was quite the struggle. He had a couple moments of showing some glimpses of what he could be. And Paxton Lynch, if you go back to the preseason, he had some moments where he showed what he could be. That game against Tampa Bay, they don't qualify that as one of his games, but he showed some promise in that game. When he wasn't really thinking as much and just going out there and playing, he showed some promise. So, again, with rookies, you got to give them some time. You can't just day one, he gives up a sack in his very first play. Devontae Booker last year fumbled his very first play. That's got to be like the worst start to an NFL career ever. But, that's just how it goes sometimes. Rookies have a struggle from day one. They're not going to be perfect. They're not going to be all pro unless you are just a ridiculous player. So Garrett Bowles, he's going to have some struggles along the way. But he does have some promise of becoming something good for us and being able to be a long-term answer for us at that left tackle position. Because remember, tackles, this is why his age thing, being 25 years old, we've said this before. Some of the best offensive tackles right now are 32, 34, 35 years old. That's 10 years in the league. That's a pretty good career for a guy. That would be great if we got that out of him.
Yeah, I would be stoked to just get 5 good years out of him on that first contract, really not even looking farther than that. So he should be 30 when he hits the market again, and that's honestly about tackle peak age. So 2 contracts, I would not be surprised at all. Something to mention as well is while he is older, being 25, he hasn't played football as long, especially at tackle. He came from Snow Valley started off there as a defensive tackle, then switched to offensive line. So he's really only been playing offensive line for about 2 years. So just huge potential there. And because he hasn't played as long, he doesn't have the wear and tear that a lot of guys at 25 years old have. So he's a little more nimble, a little more fresh, and raw. So he's not like a 25-year-old guy whose technique has just never set in. He just hasn't had the ability to work on the technique like other 25-year-olds have. So I'm expecting a more linear progression with him. By this point next year, I'm hoping that we are talking about a very solid starting tackle. Potentially right tackle, but hopefully left tackle, but potentially right tackle. He has the run blocking and the tenacity that I think he could play either tackle position well if need be.
Yeah, and we're going to get into maybe some draft guys for next year. It's not a position that is set in stone for next year of, hey, we won't go offensive tackle early on. And there's some great left tackles. As bad as this draft was, next year's is amazing. if the guys come out. There are some guys that might not come out. Just like this year, there are some guys that didn't come out. But it's looking strong. And we'll talk about those guys here in just a little bit. But before we get to them, we're going to talk about a guy Elway brought in Menelik Watson. And he came from the Raiders. He's been there for the last 4 years. And he was kind of that, as much as we're talking about this with Garrett Bowles, Menelik Watson kind of fits that same profile of being that guy that came in pretty raw, hadn't played football very long. He's from England actually, where he didn't really play a whole lot of football while he was there, and didn't really get into it until he got here. And people were like, "Man, you got the size, strength to really do something in football." But yeah, he came to the league with a lot of promise, a lot of athletic traits that you love that you have to mold into something. And unfortunately, injuries have really taken away from that ability to grow in the position. He's not been able to start an entire season in his 4 years in the NFL. And so the Raiders decided that they could let him go. And the Broncos picked him up in the hopes that maybe their training staff could keep him on the field for 16 games. That was a big reason he said he came to the Denver Broncos. But beyond all of that, Nick, how about you tell us about this guy?
Well, I think it should be you that tells us about him, since you just wrote that fantastic article that the Denver Broncos even shared. So everyone, if you haven't read it yet, go check out Carl's film breakdown of Menelik Watson with the Raiders. So it's good work, a lot of fun. I love those film pieces, and get a glimpse at it. It's a good reason to go premium. Over at Huddle Up, we don't just report the news. We take a much more analytical eye towards breaking down the game. We like to do film analysis. We like to do analytical pieces, with statistics. So check out this Watson one. I do not believe it is premium. Is it premium?
It is not, actually.
So surprise, surprise there. So get a little taste of what you guys are missing if you aren't a premium member at Huddle Up. But back to Watson. 6'5", 315 pounds, kind of that size that we were hoping that Bowles will get to, with 34-inch arms. So pretty similar stature to Garrett Bowles, surprisingly. Very physical specimen, always just been a height, weight, speed guy. Honestly, I'm surprised he is only 6'5", 315, because he looks like he's like 6'8", 330. just a tower. He's always looked like a tower. I think he has broader shoulders too. I wish they gave away not just arm measurements, arm length, but I wish they had wingspan, because I feel like he does have a pretty broad set of shoulders too, which adds more distance with his wingspan. But a good player, he's just never been able to stay healthy and take that next step because of that. We harp on here, a player's best ability is their availability, and that has not been the case with Watson so far. The Raiders have been trying to give him that right tackle position for the past few years, because Austin Howard, even though he's a Northern Iowa Panther, so I got a little soft spot for him, he just has not been that impressive on the Raiders' offensive line. Definitely the weakest position of that offensive line. And they kept trying to give it to Watson. Every time he looked like he was about to take that right tackle position, because he is obviously more physically talented than Howard is. I'm hoping that the Dove Valley wonder effect that we saw with Okung last year, where a guy who's been injured consistently comes in and is miraculously healthier. Denver's had a pretty good history of that pretty recently. So hopefully we'll see that with Watson, and he can get on the field, because he does have gobs of potential for the right tackle position.
He does. And like you said, I wrote that piece, and I honestly went into it thinking, because I remember last year I was talking to a Raiders fan, and I kept saying, Menelik Watson, he's that weak spot, and he has to go against Von Miller, twice a year, and other guys, Justin Houston, everything else. I said, they're going to get Derek Carr killed. So I kind of went into this with that kind of mindset of Watson's not going to show well. And I left the piece going, I'm actually pretty impressed with this guy. When he plays, he does some decent things. He has some decent qualities that you love to see in a right tackle. He has that mean streak when he wants it. This is a question that I've gotten from a few people of, is he always that aggressive? I showed one run play where he just destroyed a guy and was pushing him 2-3 yards back and just didn't even let him get into the play. And there are a lot of plays where you see that out of him. He just, when he wants to be physical, man, he just destroys people. But there's sometimes he gets a little lazy in that and just doesn't quite, if the play is kind of going to the other side, I don't see quite as aggressive of an attitude. And, sometimes it's that backside play. The Broncos lived off this in the 90s. Of that backside cutoff lane, and that's not quite the same system as what we're running right now, but it still needs to be there. Running back still needs to be able to see maybe that backside's opened up a little bit more. That inside's completely clogged. Well, let's bounce it back out to the right. And so that's one area that I saw with Watson that he needs to work on, is just being consistent in how he attacks. But he has the ability to be that mauler. Oakland. Man, when they needed 1 yard, you would think with Donald Penn and I always say this name wrong, Osemele. There we go. Osemele. You'd think with those two guys, they'd want to run it to that left side every time, because those guys they're premier players at their position. But that's not the case. They actually went after Gabe Jackson and Menelik Watson. That's who they wanted to run through when they needed a yard. And that's why it gives me hope. When they see that, they see, hey, these are the guys we need to run behind. These are the guys that will push that pocket 2-3 yards down the field. And yeah, it was awesome to watch. There was the Colts game. If you want to see what Watson brings to the table, what he could be for the Broncos, watch his Indianapolis Colts game last year. That's the one I'd recommend. A lot of people they always point to the playoff game where he switched over to left tackle, and they'll say he got destroyed by
it was DJ Reader.
DJ Reader, okay, he was one of them, and then
Clowney, Merciless.
Yeah, there's a whole host of them that just made him look terrible in that game. He was not great at left tackle.
No.
If he's our starting left tackle, he needs a lot of work. His footwork just isn't made for the left tackle position. And to those who say, right or left, it doesn't matter. It matters mostly because of the feet. You gotta work on which is your anchoring foot and which one's your attacking foot. All those kind of things of just how you're going to work on that. And he was asked to switch in a week. Right at the end of the season, all of a sudden, oh, you're a left tackle. It doesn't work that way. And so, yeah, he got destroyed. I'm not trying to make complete excuses for why he had a terrible game, but he's a much better right tackle. And if he can get healthy, stay healthy, and actually be able to work through some of his technique issues, because that's the other thing. He gets to leaning way too far forward. When he gets lazy or whatever you want to call it, or just doesn't pay attention to his technique, he tries to punch by, kind of leaping off his feet and trying to attack a guy, and it gets him in trouble. If he can keep his base below him, I didn't ever see him get beat when his technique was right. He never got beat in those moments. He has that, like you said, he has a lot longer wingspan than people think. His 34-inch arms don't give him justice for how hard it is to get around this guy. The other area that I would say that I was really impressed was how he handled when teams tried to run stunts at him. If you remember last year, maybe one of the biggest weaknesses for our offensive line when it came, other than the right tackle position, was when teams ran stunts at us. I don't know how many times I'd see Max Garcia almost take out Russell Okung because he was trying to chase a guy. And
leaving a wide open B gap.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, teams just they schemed for that because they said, look at this. They do it every time. And Watson, he doesn't fall for that. He has amazing patience. He has the athleticism to recover. If a guy tries to beat him to the outside, but he'll have patience just to kind of wait and keep his body square to the line of scrimmage, which is a big thing where, don't try to turn too quick. And then he'll attack when he needs to. He has patience to wait to do his punch. He doesn't do it early. He usually waits for his guy, and that's a huge trait to have. I loved him. I was blown away considering how many times I had Raiders fans tell me sometimes how terrible he was. I saw some comments on my article from Raiders fans going, good luck with this guy. And, and it's true. I mean, he has his weaknesses. I'm not trying to say he's perfect or anything like that. But if he gets some of his technique stuff worked out, I think he could be a decent answer for that right tackle position. At least better than what we had last year. That's what we're looking at. Is this going to be a step up from last year? Garrett Bowles, I don't know. Russell Okung actually did better than people ever give him credit for last year, especially in the run game. We averaged about 5 yards a carry running to his side. Garrett Bowles, he has a little bit to live up to there. Okung struggled in the pass game, but run game, he was pretty dominant. Yeah, Watson at the right tackle position, though, I think that's a huge upgrade for the Broncos. Even if he's just average for the position, that's a huge upgrade.
Absolutely. We struggled there tremendously last year, and going from the worst to even top 20, not even average, below average. That'll be a step up and big for the Broncos in the pass game and the run game. But again, it all comes back to his health. He came out of Florida State, and he was raw with his technique, hadn't played the position very long. And all the reports said, if he just needs to get on the field and work out some of his kinks because he's got the size and athleticism to hang at one of the bookends. And because of just constantly dealing with injuries, he's been stunted in his growth. He hasn't had that progression because he's in the trainer room more than on the field or in the weight room. So he's got to show he can stay healthy, and hopefully the development will come behind that.
Right. And that was one of the most frustrating things when watching his tape. It wasn't so much what he did on the field. It was the fact that how many games did he start? And about 15, 20 snaps into the game, he was out.
Yep.
The first about 5 games that I watched, that's what happened, because I was just looking at, games started. And so I'd watch that tape. And all of a sudden, 20 snaps in, here's this new guy, and I'm going, what in the world? Mm-hmm. And so I finally started looking at, snaps played per game, and finally found some games where he actually played the entire game. And I'm going, oh my gosh, it took a while to find this. and that's what his biggest weakness. It's not what he does on the field. It's the fact that he's not on the field.
Yep, absolutely agreed. Bringing it back to your piece, one thing that I wanted to note was how many of your segments that you chose were run blocking plays?
Well, I'd just watch entire series is what I would do, or try to watch an entire game with him. And so I'd say about 60% of what I watched was actually run plays with him, and about 40% pass blocking. But I knew he was a decent run blocker. You could watch a few plays of him run blocking and see that this guy has the physical tools just to dominate in that area. That was never really a big issue for him. Like I said, he sometimes gets a little lazy in how he handles some things, but for the most part, if they're running behind him, he's moving his guy backwards. I wasn't worried about that, but it was his pass blocking I wanted to see, because that was our big issue last year. They weren't great run blockers at the right tackle position either, but man, they were getting quarterbacks killed. That Atlanta game for Paxton Lynch, just, like you said, Vic Beasley had a career day. Justin Houston, had a career day. And so both our quarterbacks got killed in those games. And so what would he do in the pass game? And he did have those few times where he really lunged at a guy. There's about 2 or 3 plays a game where he would lunge at a guy. And it just – usually they were getting the ball out quick enough that it didn't matter. But against the Broncos, if they're trying to have that long developing play down the field to hit the big play, yeah, that's going to matter big time. So he's got to clean that up. Like I said, when he gets his technique right, when he stays over his feet, he doesn't get beat.
Yeah, when I was considering of doing an article on him a few months ago when we signed him, and I went to that Colts game, and while I did enjoy many of the run blocking snaps, I feel like given his tools, he didn't play with the nastiness or the dominance, especially against 240-pound edge rushers types against the Colts, that I was hoping for. Whether that be chemistry with Jackson, his right guard, Gabe Jackson, or just, executing his block and maintaining on there. But I didn't see that much of a killer instinct. So I was just curious why you had 4 of the 5 as pass blocking sets rather than run blocking. So I was curious if you were a little bit hoping for a little more when you watched him in run blocking.
Yeah, I realized after I got done that I'd done that. I should have maybe included another run play, but there were in that Colts game, if you watch their big runs, pretty much a lot of those were right behind Melik Watson. And he would, when he dominated, he really dominated. But yeah, he has some times where he leaves some things to be desired in the run game. He really struggles. I think sometimes it's more not the initial block, it's maintaining the block.
Yeah.
He has a great punch, but sometimes he really struggles to know what to do once he gets the punch, gets the guy thrown off. He's not the biggest finisher, I guess is the way I would say it in the run game. And that's what I'd like to see out of him a little bit more, is just to truly finish off the guy. He kind of lets up after a little bit. He's not Garrett Bowles standing over the top of a guy staring him down.
Exactly. That's what I thought as well. I just wanted to see if I was reading a little bit too much into your 4 or 5, because obviously we do have questions about the pass blocking sets, but if we're going prototype right tackle, left tackle, that right tackle's the run blocker Mahler type. So
yeah, no, he's great. Like I said, I think the Broncos this year, especially if Leary's going to start at right guard, like it's kind of shaping out to be, those 3rd and 1 plays to the right, you don't even have to worry about those. They'll have those guys blocked 2-3 yards down the field. That's what I'm excited for. That was my least favorite play last year, 3rd and 1. I've said that before on the show. Hated it. Every time I saw it come up, I went, gosh, dang it, might as well go to the bathroom now because they're just going to punt it away. They might as well punt on 3rd down because it's probably going to be longer on 4th down. And I don't worry about that this year. They're going to dominate on that right side.
As long as everyone stays healthy.
Yes. Yeah, that's going to be the big concern for the entire offensive line this year. Paradis, he's been hurt. Leary, he had a groin injury at one point. He has a degenerative knee issue. We're going to talk about that more in the next episode. And, of course, Watson, he's played 17 games in 4 years. That's not always a great look for your top three guys maybe on your offensive line.
Yeah, especially trying to develop a young quarterback and get them some protection and get them a run game. So Watson signed for a 3-year, $18.75 million deal. But I won't say for the most part, but it is very similar to a 1-year deal just because the dead money in the second year or the third year is not very high. So Elway left himself in a position where if Watson struggles with injury, we can move on from him if need be. So that's good.
Yeah, the first year I think is $3.3 million for his cap hit. That's pretty minimal. I think Stevenson's making more than him this year.
If he makes the team.
Yeah, if he makes the team. And then the next few years after that, it jumps up to about $7.5 million. So he's got a 1 year to really prove that he can stay healthy, that he can be productive, and that he can maybe be that long-term answer at that right tackle position. That he could be here for the next 3 years and hold that spot down and be fine. But he's got to prove it. He's got a lot to prove. He's got a ton of potential. He's got the size, physical tools, everything you would want in a right tackle. But he's got to prove it.
Amen. Well, we are already at 40 minutes, so we should probably move along to Ty Sambrailo.
Okay, yes. All right, so speaking of an injury-prone right tackle, we have Ty Sambrailo, 6'5", 315 pounds, and I don't know if you've seen pictures of this guy from this year, but he looks like a different player. I've been told that he's added about 15 pounds of muscle for this upcoming season. He finally got healthy enough to work out.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see what can happen with that. But right now, Ty Sambrailo, he's looking like the guy that maybe could be the swing tackle for the Broncos this upcoming season. He is right now actually slated above Garrett Bowles at that left tackle position. I don't think that'll last very long in the training camp, but that is what we're at right now.
Yeah, he went to Colorado State, obviously, played for the Rams in Fort Collins, one of my favorite cities in the world personally, and started 42 of 48 games in college. And he saw time at all 5 different positions. So I remember when the Broncos brought him in to work him out, he was doing snaps at center. So he's somebody who's versatile and was considered one of the better zone-blocking offensive linemen in his class. He played tight end in high school as well as kicker, which is kind of fun. If McManus ever gets hurt, maybe they'll throw Sambrailo out there. Maybe he'd be better at kicker instead of tackle. I don't know. At this point, maybe. And he won a few titles as a freestyle skier, so that shows a little bit of agility and athleticism for the big guy. He didn't have the most incredible combine. He ran a 5.3 640 and had a solid 3-cone at 7.54, which isn't Bowles level, but it is pretty solid, and had an arm length of 33, so a little short for a tackle. You want 33 is probably the bare minimum. I'd prefer 33.5, but not the biggest guy, not the longest guy, and not the strongest guy as well. So with those long arms, you got to have a little bit more strength to make up for it, and he hasn't shown that, at least not in his career where he's been injured fairly frequently.
Yeah, I think that's been his biggest issue. When coming into the league, everybody said the one thing he needs to do is be able to add strength. And unfortunately, and it wasn't to the lower body. I mean, his legs are fine. He needed to add a little bit more muscle there, but it was more his upper body. And unfortunately, all of his injuries have been to his upper body. I'm trying to remember his first year was it torn pectoral?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah. And so all of a sudden, after a couple games, his rookie year showing some promise, he actually showed some promise in 2015. And then he got injured. He's starting to improve there a little bit. And then he never quite got healthy. And then all of a sudden he comes in training camp last year and starting to look a little okay. And all of a sudden he breaks his elbow. And again, can't do anything to improve his upper body. And yet they had to stick him out there. And the way it works is, if you don't have a great punch and you don't have the ability to hold on to a defender, they're just going to beat you. They're just going to push you straight back, or they're going to knock your arms down the second you try to block them. And that's exactly what we saw last year. He was getting bull rushed where he looked like he was on skates. It was, I hate talking about last year with either Stevenson or Sambrailo. It was bad, and it was bad in both the run and pass game. That's the thing is, at least with some players you can sit there and say, oh well, at least they did okay in this one area. No, they didn't have any good area that you could hold your hat on and say, well, maybe they can do something. So this year,
snap count. That's it.
Yeah, that's about it. So he struggled a lot, and thankfully this offseason he was able to get healthy and maybe can prove why he was a second-round pick. I think a lot of people were kind of torn on the pick. A lot of people said he was a little bit of a reach back then, and he's got a lot to prove to show that he even deserves to make this team this upcoming year. But he does have versatility, like you said. He played all 5 positions in college. For the NFL, he's played left tackle, right tackle, and even had some experience last year in training camp for left guard. Or was it right guard? Can't remember. Left guard, I think. Left guard. And, so he's had a little bit of versatility, and that's nice to have for your backups. That's what you want. You want guys that can start multiple positions, so you don't have to keep as many guys for the 53-man roster. But, I don't know. What do you think are his chances of making this roster?
Well, I am a believer, and it is the dead season, so I'm going to keep drinking some orange Kool-Aid. And I think that if everything goes well and if everything goes the way Elway and the front office want it, Sambrailo will make the team as the swing tackle this year, backing up both Bowles at left tackle and Watson at right tackle, mainly due to Sambrailo still being relatively cheap on that rookie deal and not having to pay Stevenson a much heftier cap hit. So I think hopefully the added muscle will help him this year, as well as just having a healthy offseason where he can focus, because that really is important. But if he plays anything like he has the last 2 years, then he's not going to be long for the NFL, let alone Denver.
Agreed. Now, do you think that there's any chance that he could actually win the starting job over Bowles?
There definitely is a chance that it could happen, because Bowles is raw, and they're going to base it on how they play. There's no real rush to throw Bowles out there. So if Sambrailo's playing better, and if Sambrailo's Watson is a better combo, then I wouldn't be upset about it. That said, I think it's probably more likely that you see Sambrailo or you see Watson get injured, and then Sambrailo come up and play for him, whether that be left tackle or right tackle, and have Bowles play the other spot.
Agreed. Yeah, I think Bowles will win it. Early on I was hearing about Sambrailo showing some success in minicamp and OTAs. But it seemed like he kind of went downhill as time went on, and Bowles kind of really showed well. Not great, but showed some promise, I guess I should say. He was still getting beat by Von Miller, was getting beat by was it Edibala?
Edibala was whooping up on him.
Yeah. So he was still having his struggles, but I think he showed enough promise for the team to really get excited about what he could be, especially coming up here in training camp, where they can get a little bit more contact going, because that's going to be where Sambrailo is going to have to show himself. It's not really in these no padded, put your hands on him and the play's done kind of thing. It's going to be when they actually get the pads on, hat on a hat, see what these guys can do.
Agreed, and Sambrailo's just got to show that he can be healthy and hold up in the trenches, because right now, you were talking about it, he looked like he was an armless player last year. Like, that's how he played. Just a dude out there with no arms trying to block people, because that's how weak he was with his punch. As soon as the guys made contact with his arms, they would just run right through him. So his feet never really have been a problem. He can get caught a little bit lunging and whatnot with his balance, but he is pretty agile, and he just hasn't had the upper body strength or the core strength to make anything with his contact. Getting in front of them can only do so much. So hopefully he will show in the offseason, and if not, like I said, he might not be long for the NFL. I am curious to see how he does with the switch to the power scheme. I always thought he was a better zone blocker than a power blocker, and his lack of strength so far in the NFL may be magnified with the scheme switching. But still, I'm pulling for him, and I think that there's enough hope with the tackle that he may make the team and save the overall team some money.
Perfect. All right, well, the guy he's in a big-time battle with for this upcoming season is Donald Stevenson. He's actually been decently versatile, playing left tackle for the Chiefs for a while, and right tackle for us this past season, and was supposed to kind of be that guy that came in and secured that right tackle spot for us, and finally gave us a weapon since Franklin left. And last year that obviously didn't happen, but he's still here. They restructured his deal. Instead of making the $4 million fully guaranteed, they divided up where he had $2 million guaranteed and $2 million if he makes the 53-man roster. So he's got a lot to play for. A lot of money on the table for him at this moment. And I don't know. He's got a lot to prove. I think Sombrero at least has that promise that he's added muscle. What has Stevenson done? That's the question that comes up for me. He's still that same player that shows physical ability. At the combine, this is why he was the third-round pick. He had a 4.94 40, 35.5-inch vertical, 114-inch broad jump, 7.52 3-cone, 4.78 20-yard shuttle, long arms at 34 7/8 inch. That's a lot of promise. That's a lot of physical, especially speed ability for the position. But it's never translated to the field. He's always kind of struggled with actually playing the tackle position.
Yeah, he came over from the Chiefs, and where he really honestly flashed his best was at left tackle. And with how he plays, he's more of a passive tackle rather than a ass whoop tackle, to quote Bach Lombardi. And, you just spouted it. The 4.94 40 and long arms and just a good athlete. And I honestly think he'd be a better option at left tackle than right tackle. He just doesn't have that strength where he can move guys, and he's a much better mover and pass blocker. So having those stronger guys against him on that right tackle spot just has never been the best fit for him. And he played his best ball at the Chiefs. That's what garnered him this contract at left tackle when he was filling in for Fisher. I do not think Stevenson will probably be making the roster just because that saves $2 million for the team if he doesn't. And I think they'll probably have Schofield as the fourth tackle. Maybe somebody will be cut and we'll bring in another one. But my guess is they wouldn't keep Stevenson, which is kind of sad because, he does have the prototype size and athleticism to hang at tackle, but he just never has had the technique. And above that, he's never had the mentality, whether it be the mental consistency from a snap-to-snap basis or just the overall demeanor where I'm going to put my hands on this guy and rough him up and out-physical them. He just doesn't have that. He's just a little bit too passive for the tackle position. So I'm guessing he does not make the team. He's struggled enough. He's had some injuries. And what it comes down to for me overall is the money. Save $2 million, hopefully roll that over for next year. Have a little more money to play with next offseason, with other contracts going up. So I think he is not long for the Broncos this offseason.
All right, well, we're going to move on here real quick to some 2018 college prospects because I don't think there's – beyond these four people and Schofield, who has versatility, we're going to talk about him in the guard section. But, yeah, beyond that, we don't have a whole lot on this team. And it's a very weak depth-wise team. And so next year, 2018, Broncos once again could be looking at offensive tackle early in the draft. And you have some names here for people, our listeners, to really be paying attention to for this upcoming season. So how about you share some of those with us?
Well, first on my list is left tackle out of the University of Texas, Connor Williams. Connor Williams is right now considered one of the more elite prospects heading into next offseason. He is a very controlled mover in space, looks very natural in pass block sets. I think he was just a 4-star recruit, but has really grown into his body. He's like 6'5", 300, and just a smooth mover. He just looks so natural when he's pass blocking and run blocking. A lot of those big runs for Dante Foreman last year, Connor Williams is a big part of that. So I think he'll probably be a top 10 pick next year. I am curious about his arm length. He does look like he has somewhat shorter arms. I do not think he will break 35 inches. If he's 34, good for him, then he'll make it. He might be under 34, though, so that's a question. But I think he's got all the talent in the world, and he's somebody I'm excited to watch this year for Texas since they've struggled the past few years in putting out NFL talent. The next guy who I think probably should have come out last year, honestly, is Mike McGlinchey. He might have been the first tackle taken. He is returning to Notre Dame, and he is a monster. He's 6'8", about 315 pounds, and just played right tackle when the Fighting Irish had Ronnie Stanley over at left tackle, then made the transition to left tackle last year and looked pretty good. He's not an incredible athlete. He's not the athlete that Bowles is or Williams or a few other guys we'll talk about, But he's just, one of those guys that doesn't ever look panicked, moves very well, plays with decent leverage for 6'8". He doesn't let guys get into his pads too often. He did struggle so much with Malik McDowell early last year, but Malik McDowell is a freak athlete, so not a big surprise. And McGlinchey could end up being a top 10 pick next year as well. I love that he has the versatility to be a left tackle or a right tackle. The next name I want to talk about, another high recruit, Mitch Hyatt from Clemson, 6'5", about 290. So somebody who's going to have to get a little bigger, a little stronger in the NFL, but very good mover, very athletic, agile, and has always been that 5-star guy. He's going up against very good athletes at Clemson in practice, and obviously they have a star on their back this year, being the defending champions. So, or more like a target on their back. So he's definitely one to watch, and he's going to have to get stronger. He might not come out this year. He's going to be a junior, but definitely has the tools to be a starting bookend. The next one that's not getting a lot of hype right now is Trey Adams from Washington. Good size. Apparently he's a 6'6", about 300, but they're saying that he put on about 15, 20 pounds this year. So that's good. He is, again, another very good athlete at the left tackle position, moves well, a better pass blocker than run blocker right now. He needs to get stronger, more core strength in order to last as a tackle in the NFL, because right now he's not the best run blocker, but with the added strength and another year in the training and conditioning program at Washington, we may see that next step. One of my favorites from early on, I've been hyping him for a bit, is Chukwuma Okorafor, the left tackle from Western Michigan, 6'6", 330 pounds, and just 18 years old. Is going to be he might be 19. Just going to be a senior this year, so he's really young. He came to the USA from Nigeria, traveled around Africa a little bit too, but came over here high school and started his college ball at Western Michigan at 16 years old. So he's a young guy still, and very good athlete. Needs to get stronger, needs to be a little bit more refined technically, but huge upside and one of my favorite under the radar tackles in this class. Some more names to note: you have Martinez Rankins, who might be playing center this year for Mississippi State. Jamarco Jones, who's a tackle for Ohio State, who blocked very well, one of the better players in that Clemson-Ohio State game where Ohio State got spanked, so I'm excited to watch him. Archie Lewis, who is a good tackle for Boise State. I think he's only 6'3", though, so he might have to move into guard. And Orlando Brown Jr., who I have way down here because I think he's probably just purely a right tackle, but he's 6'8", 350 pounds, I believe, and son of a former Orlando Brown Sr., I guess, both known as Zeus. And, a good run blocker. So if Denver's looking for a right tackle round 2 next year, I wouldn't be surprised if they took Orlando Brown Jr., kind of the Phil Lodeholt mold, where he's not the most agile guy, but for his size, he's decently agile enough to be a starting tackle probably, and will sit at the right tackle position and be a mauler. So overall, obviously there's going to be some more names that pop up. That's just how it goes. But overall, compared to last year, it looks like a much better class. I'm not willing to say it's a better class than the 2015 class. That class was awesome. You had Decker, Conklin, Stanley, and Tunsil, as well as Spriggs. So that, and Ifidi. So that class was damn good. I'm not ready to say it's going to be that good yet, but overall, looks like a pretty solid class. And depending on how Watson and Bowles do, and just the value of the tackle position, I am 100% here to take another tackle next year if that makes sense, with the most value at the position and protect the young quarterback.
All right, good breakdown. I appreciate it. And yeah, some good names. I love watching Connor Williams. He just gets it. That's I don't know if that's a right way. I don't think that's a scouting term, but he just looks so smooth in everything he does. Like you said, yeah, it's so easy. Yeah. Trey Adams. I love that kid. He has such potential. I'm interested to see what he can do this year, and I can see him being one of those guys that can play left or right tackle. He's just got the athleticism and the strength to be able to do either. So, yeah, very interested in him. Orlando Brown, loved watching him run people over. I was kind of hoping he would come out this year. Yeah. But, yeah, I love him as well. Those are my 3 guys that I'm watching big time. And I know you have your Okorafor. Did I say that right?
Yep, Okorafor. And he's
yeah.
got some pretty tough matchups early on. I think week 1 they play USC. So he's going to
that'll be huge. So he'll get on the map early. So, but yeah, some great guys for this upcoming season, and definitely a position that, because of the price, I mean, you look at, right tackle, left tackle, they're making, $10-12 million a year. So if you can get those cheap rookie options and get some young guys to surround these quarterbacks and protect them and build with them, that would be great for the Broncos.
Yeah, and for everything that we have done right on defense, we have not done right on offense. There's obviously a little bit of trade for either side because you don't get unlimited first-round draft picks, but I would not be against going tackle around one again next year. I mean, look at what it's done for the Titans quarterback, Mariota. He's got Taylor Lewan and he's got Jack Conklin, and that's just made a world of difference for their run game and the quarterback. So if the Broncos can do the same for whether it be Simeon, Lynch, Slaughter, whoever it is, it's going to be big for the team to get those bookends. So I'm pulling for Watson and Bulls, but if the value comes down to it next year, I am 100% for taking a tackle again. So, all right, well, that will wrap up episode 22 of our Huddle Up podcast. Stay tuned for future deep dives into positional groups as we are about 2 weeks from training camp. Come on. Hurry, as Peyton Manning would say. Bronco fans, make sure to keep checking back on Mile High Huddle for all your updates on camp battles and all other Bronco news. You can find Carl on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH. And again, just a plug for him, check out his article that the Denver Broncos PR team decided was good enough to share in Menelik Watson film breakdown. So it's worth a read. Go check it out. You can follow myself on Twitter as well at Nick Kendell MHH and find all of our Bronco articles on Mile High Huddle, an affiliate of Scout.com and a member of the CBS Sports Digital Media. You can follow the Huddle Up podcast by subscribing on iTunes and for Android users, Stitcher, Spreaker, CastBox, SoundCloud, etc. Please take time to rate us and leave us a review. We do read those and we take them to heart. We just had a comment a few days ago about our intro potentially being a little bit more succinct or actually it was today, our intro just being a little more succinct with the one that Chad and Will do. So we'll be working on that because we are here for you guys. We want to make it an enjoyable listening experience for you guys, the listeners. So, but in order to do that, you got to communicate with us, leave us a rating, leave us a review. We love to hear from you guys and we're here for you. For Carl Dumler, I'm Nick Kendell, wrapping up the 22nd episode of the Draft Huddle Up podcast. Man, 22 already, Carl. We hope you enjoy. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's
22.
been fun, man. It's been a lot of fun.
So, we need football to come back so we can have some more fresh stuff to talk about. We hope you enjoyed, and we will see you next week. Go Broncos.
Mile High Huddle.